difference of theory and philosophy should be very clear. A philosophical idea need not have any experimentally verifiable consequence. A theoretical idea of science, on the other hand, must have an experimentally verifiable consequence. It must be able to guide future research. My work passes this test in flying colors. There is a prediction. I already have told you that the prediction has verified by 4 different independent experiments, and it has guided the work of transpersonal psychologists, work of alternative healing, work on evolution, not only mine, but other people too. So it is already guiding research in science, for which this idea of individual choice is meaningful. It is true what you say about physics and chemistry. When you work with many, many particles and many, many events, all we need is probabilities, and quantum mathematics calculate those probabilities very well. One does not have to address the quantum measurement in a single measurement. That issue does not even arise for ordinary experiments that verify quantum physics in the laboratory. So as far as physics and chemistry is concerned, there is hardly any application of these ideas. But for biological systems, for living systems, we are forced to think of single objects and single events. It is for these situations, a single object, a patient who has to heal himself or herself by intention, single object and single event. There you have no way that you can apply probabilistic quantum physics. You don't have a million patients with million events to look at. You have one single patient with a single intention and a single event. Will she be healed or not? In these cases, only this approach that I am taking is applicable. And this approach is passing the test, because we now have many cases of quantum healing that a person can intend herself or himself to help if intention is made in the proper spirit. In other words, if the intention resonates with the intention of that cosmic consciousness which makes the choice, then individual intentions are rewarded.
Laís, por favor. Por favor.
Eu acho que é difícil, até para os mais céticos, né, negarem um certo paralelismo entre as interpretações que se pode fazer da teoria quântica e o que dizem as tradições espirituais, particularmente as do Oriente, né, como o budismo, o Vedanta, o taoísmo. Né. Do taoísmo, o Niels Bohr tomou emprestado para gravar em seu brasão o símbolo yin-yang do Tai Chi. Com a inscrição em latim, os opostos são complementares. Isso para representar o princípio básico da física quântica, que é o princípio da complementaridade da autoria do Bohr. Né? Agora, o curioso nesse símbolo é que ele é bem mais complexo do que ele aparenta na sua simplicidade. Né? E considerando os seus níveis de significação, os seus elementos, ele vai fundo ao princípio da complementaridade. Né? E apresenta as características de complementaridade que, surpreendentemente, são muito próximas da interpretação idealista da teoria quântica pelo Amit Goswami. Não sei se já se deu conta disso. E, entre outros detalhes, ele simboliza com um ponto branco yang, né, no preto yin e vice-versa, uma dinâmica cíclica, autorreferente, que leva à unidade por um agente oculto, transcendente, que é o Tao, né, que contém o manifesto, o não manifesto, e é ainda agente causal, que realmente corresponde à lógica da hierarquia entrelaçada, né, e o nível inviolado da consciência una, não local, na linguagem da interpretação quântica de Goswami. Eu me pergunto se já deu conta disso, se tomou conhecimento do significado desse símbolo até as suas últimas consequências, e se o Bohr teria vislumbrado essa interpretação idealista, uma vez que ele esteve na China em 1937, depois de terminado todo o seu trabalho, né, e ficou muito impressionado com a complementaridade yin-yang. E, voltando, ele passou a estudar, né, a se interessar muito pela cultura oriental. 10 anos depois é que ele colocou o símbolo no brasão. Não teria Bohr, com toda a sua perspicácia, com todo o seu conhecimento, com a sua grande criatividade, teria aparecido talvez nos seus escritos tardios algum indício dessa percepção da sua teoria, dessa interpretação idealista da teoria quântica?
I think thank you for the question. This is great history to remember. I think all of the quantum physicists of that era, the major one, were definitely Werner Heisenberg, Erwin Schrödinger, Einstein himself, whom we have already mentioned. It is not widely known that Einstein himself discovered quantum non-locality, the idea that quantum physics contains this peculiar concept of non-locality, which is why he couldn't accept it, because it seems to go against the grain of relativity theory. Only now we can see that it bypasses relativity, because what it is saying is that signal-less communication should occur outside of space and time. But in Einstein's time, we couldn't conceive of the universe having a component that is outside of space and time. But Heisenberg already talked about the domain of potentia, which is outside of space and time. Einstein just couldn't grasp it at that time and could not believe in quantum non-locality. Now, quantum non-locality is verified in the physics laboratory in 1982, and of course for the humans that I already described in 1993-94. So it is then experiments that made all this quantum magic come to life. Before that, it would have been very difficult for these people, although they suspected that philosophy of physics is due for a very great paradigm shift. They all suspected it. Schrödinger even declared, I am this whole world, cosmic consciousness, but not in connection with his work. What is his work? His work brought down to the paradox of Schrödinger's cat, which he never could himself solve. Only von Neumann recognized that, yes, consciousness is the solution, but he could not rise above a dualistic theory of consciousness. He was not radical enough to recognize that consciousness is the ground of being. Eugene Wigner, another Nobel laureate, suspected the same thing, that consciousness is important, but again could not be radical enough, could not go far enough, which is to recognize that consciousness is cosmic, not individual. So he raised the paradox, also got bogged down in his own paradox, could not solve it. But you see the struggle these people are going through. They are the people who recognize that a radical shift of philosophy, a radical shift of the way of doing science is coming. The people who picked up their attitude are people like John Bell, people like Alan Aspect, who verified quantum non-locality, and people like myself, Henry Stapp, Fred Alan Wolf, who are actually involved. Ludwig Vasa I have already mentioned, Casey Blatt I have already mentioned. And these are the people who picked up that same spirit. But thank you for reminding us that the